Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Global Frontiers AI Ethics and Safety for Humanity panel of the Science for Life Symposium. And this is the event in the framework of VinFuture SciTech Week, VinFuture Prize Award Ceremony 2025. One more time, welcome all of you, and thank you so much for your esteemed presence. Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the VinFuture Prize is a prestigious global science and technology award proudly originated from Vietnam. And the topics we will explore in today's panel are crucial for advancing global scientific progress and hold significant relevance for human life. Artificial intelligence, as we may know, is reshaping the foundations of modern society, revolutionizing sectors from education and healthcare to communication, industry, and governance. While its rapid advancement offers unprecedented opportunities for innovations and human development, AI raises significant ethical and safety challenges that demand careful intention. Issues such as the fairness, transparency, accountability, and prevention of bias or misuse are critical to ensure that AI technologies are developed and deployed responsibly. Public trust and international cooperation are essential if we want AI to serve as a positive force for humanity and contribute to a safe, equitable, and sustainable future for all of us. And to promote scientific and technological knowledge to the public and connect generations of young scientists, inventors, and entrepreneurs with global established inventors for potential partnerships, this event is held with participation of distinguished speakers who have excellent expertise and experience in the field of artificial intelligence. And to come to our symposium today, it is our honor to introduce to you, first and foremost, representing the government of Vietnam, we are honored to welcome Associate Professor Bui The Duy, Deputy Minister, Ministry of Science and Technology. Thank you so much for your presence. Second, representing the VinFuture Foundation, please welcome Professor Sir Richard Henry Friend, Chair of the VinFuture Prize Council, University of Cambridge, United Kingdom. Thank you, sir. It is our honor to welcome Dr. Lê Mai Lan, Vice Chairwoman of Vingroup, President of the University Council of Vin University, and Vice President of VinFuture Foundation. Thank you so much for your presence. And we are honored to welcome the presence of Dr. Thái Hà Lê, Managing Director of VinFuture Foundation. And last but not least, representing Vin University, please welcome Professor Tan Yap Peng, Provost of Vin University. Welcome, sir. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and now we are deeply honored to invite Associate Professor Bui The Duy to be on the stage to deliver the opening remarks. So, Associate Professor, please, the stage is yours.
Good afternoon. Distinguished Professor Richard Friend, Chair of the VinFuture Prize Council and chairs of today's event, distinguished experts, scientists, speakers, and esteemed delegates. Vietnam has issued its first national AI strategies in 2021. However, AI has been advancing at an extraordinary pace, and by the end of this year, we will introduce an updated AI strategies along with the AI law. These documents are not only legal frameworks, but also a declaration of Vietnam's national visions, affirming AI is a pillar of national intelligence, contributing to social well-being, sustainable development, and enhanced national competitiveness. AI today is no longer merely an applied technology. It is becoming essential infrastructures like electricity, telecommunications, and the internet. And in nations that master AI will hold a significant advantage in socio-economic developments and national defense. For these reasons, Vietnam is building a national AI supercomputing centers, expanding open data ecosystems, and developing domestic AI infrastructure toward technological autonomies. At the same time, we are accelerating nationwide AI adoptions, making AI a universal intelligent assistant for every citizen to boost productivity and expand access to knowledge, something that in the past only senior leaders could afford. Vietnam remains committed to developing AI based on an open philosophy, open standards, open data, and open source technologies. Openness enables us to absorb global knowledge, strengthen domestic capabilities, support the Make in Vietnam visions, and contribute back to the humanities. Openness also serves as a foundation for safety, transparency, and trust in AI applications. For AI to grow, the domestic markets must be sufficiently large. Without applications, there is no market. And without a market, Vietnamese AI companies cannot mature. Therefore, the government will promote AI deployment across industries and public agencies. The National Technology Innovation Fund will allocate about 30 to 40% of its resources, including AI vouchers for SMEs, to ensure that Vietnam becomes a cradle for strong AI enterprises. We emphasize AI transformation, not just AI applications. AI transformation is a comprehensive restructuring of organizations, sectoral and national operations using AI to create new capabilities in management, productions, and innovations, similar to industrializations or digital transformations. With a young, dynamic population of 100 million people, Vietnam is not only a large market, but also a birthplace for new AI products. Together with 11 strategic technology areas, strong computing infrastructures, abundant data, Make in Vietnam tech enterprises, and an ambitious community of startups and researchers, Vietnam possesses all the ingredients to accelerate rapidly in the AI era. Alongside opportunities, AI also poses challenges related to ethics, employment, and social trust. Therefore, Vietnam is committed to developing AI in a manner that is fast, safe, and human-centered, where AI assists humans, but humans remain the ultimate decision makers. In the coming periods, Vietnam will issue a national code of ethics for AIs, an updated AI strategies, and the AI law built upon core principles, risk-based governance, transparencies, and accountabilities, human-centered designs, encouragement of domestic AI development, positioning AI as a driver of rapid and sustainable growth, and safeguarding national digital sovereignty through data, infrastructures, and domestic technologies. In the digital age, technology is global, but data is local. Critical application must operate on Vietnamese AI infrastructure, harmonizing global platform with national platform. This presents an opportunity for developing nations where competitive advantage lies not only in core technologies, but also in local contexts, cultures, data, and real-world problems. Vietnam actually have many problems to solve. Vietnam's AI pathway can be defined by the word and, global and local, cooperation and autonomies, technologies and applications, excellence and inclusiveness, open data and protected data. AI development must rely on 4 interconnected pillars: institutions, infrastructures, human resources, and AI culture. AI and its associated challenges are also inseparable pairs of and. AI creates challenges, but AI can also help solve them, from training AI talents to detecting ethical violations. AI measures through the very issues it generates, and our responsibility is to coexist with and wisely govern these challenges. AI represents a historic opportunity for Vietnam to leapfrog and become a high-income developed nation. All Asian tigers achieve their breakthroughs by seizing opportunities from major industrial revolution. After decades of development, Vietnam has become the world's 32nd largest economy and now possesses the conditions necessary to enter the AI era, raising productivities, achieving double-digit growth, strengthening national governance, and enhancing national protections. Vietnam's AI declaration is human-centered, open, safe, autonomous, cooperative, inclusive, and sustainable. Ladies and gentlemen, in this spirit, global frontiers, AI ethics and safety for humanities is an important occasion for us to share perspectives, experiences, and aspirations for future where AI is safe, human-centered, and beneficial to societies. I sincerely thank all of you for your presence and express my gratitude to the VinFuture Foundation for creating a platform for such significance. I am confident that today's presentations and exchange will offer profound insights, valuable ideas, and practical orientations for the development of safe and responsible AI for humanities. I wish the panel discussion great success. Thank you very much.
We sincerely thank Associate Professor Bui The Duy for the inspiring and insightful opening remarks. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and now it is our great honor to invite Professor Sir Richard Henry Friend, the chair of the VinFuture Prize Council, to be on the stage right now to deliver the opening address for today's symposium topic, Global Frontiers, AI Ethics and Safety for Humanity. So professors, please.
Minister, colleagues, distinguished guests, this is a very appropriate symposium we're running this afternoon, picking up on events that have been unfolding at unprecedented speed. At the end of this week, on Friday, we announce the winners of the 5th round of the VinFuture Prizes, which will be a special occasion, as it has been the previous 4 years. When we set up the VinFuture Prizes, we were very clear that we were going to reward or recognize not just individual brilliance, but brilliance that has coupled through to make big societal changes. We've surveyed everything that we could find around the world in every area of human endeavor, and we've ended up rewarding or recognizing elements of AI 3 times, reflecting the fact that it has made a huge impact on society. In 2022, the Grand Prize recognized the foundations of the Internet, not just the software innovations, but also the hardware We picked out particularly optical fiber. Without that, information that flows around the world simply couldn't travel at the speed it needs to. We also recognized one of the early and very obviously beneficial outcomes of AI, and that was the work of the team in Google DeepMind, who had developed a modeling system to model the structure of proteins, AlphaFold. And then last year, we did award the grand prize to the key players who had made the AI in the form that we now see it possible. But again, it wasn't just a single individual, it wasn't just a bit of individual brilliance, it required a number of components to come together. So we had pioneers from deep learning, we had a pioneer from the organization of data sets, and we had the pioneer of the hardware in the form of the chief executive of NVIDIA. Without all those elements, it would not have happened. And I think it's very interesting, I'm not sure how histories will come to be written of this, that it's also unexpected. The speed with which AI has happened has taken everybody unawares. It's happened much faster than the internet found its way into everyday life. But that speed is a function of that confluence of extraordinary developments across all those elements of human endeavor. So last year, at the big prize ceremony in December, it was a celebration of those achievements. We were very well aware, and indeed we had some very direct discussions, that the power of AI as it now is makes possible many good things, but it raises huge challenges. This year, we are going to learn from real experts this afternoon about how those challenges may play out. It really is a challenge for society just to keep up with the changes that are being forced on it, as we've heard from the Minister, on all aspects of life. So I won't stand further in the way of listening to the experts, but welcome you all to this afternoon's lectures.
Thank you so much, Professor Richard Henry Friend, for your opening remark to our symposium today. Ladies and gentlemen, and now, could you please direct your attention to the main screen, and let's take a moment to the introduction video clip about today's topic, and also we get acquainted with our chair and our panelists and our distinguished speakers. Video, please.
Thousands of faces that never lived, thousands of voices that never spoke. AI writes our reality, faster than we can question it. When truth is synthetic, who decides what is real? According to the Pew Research Center, in 2025, 32% of adults across 25 countries do not trust their governments to effectively regulate artificial intelligence. Meanwhile, the Stanford's 2025 AI Index report notes, AI-related incidents rose by over 56% in 2024 and warns of uneven progress in responsible AI. Highlights troubling cases such as facial recognition misidentification, deepfake harassment, AI chatbots impersonating deceased individuals, and chatbots encouraging self-harm, signaling an urgent need for global action and accountability. To advance global dialogue and explore pathways toward a responsible and human-centered AI future, the VinFuture Foundation presents the Symposium, Global Frontiers, AI Ethics and Safety for Humanity, bringing together leading scientists, policymakers, and innovators to build a future where intelligent technologies advance humanity through ethics and trust. The symposium is honored by the participation of Associate Professor Bui The Duy, Deputy Minister of Science and Technology, representing Vietnam's strong commitment to guiding innovation with human values and accountability. The chair of the symposium is Professor Sir Richard Friend, University of Cambridge, United Kingdom, chair of the VinFuture Prize Council and laureate of the Millennium Technology Prize, 2010. The symposium proudly welcomes leading scientists and innovators from across the globe, including Associate Professor César de la Fuente, the University of Pennsylvania, USA, recipient of the Sloan Research Fellowships, 2025, and among the top 1% most cited researchers across fields, Associate Professor Lou Antoine, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, and Vin University, Vietnam, recipient of the MTI Singapore Innovation Award, 2013, Professor Edson Prestes, Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, Brazil, former member of the UNESCO Ad Hoc Expert Group, recipient of the IEESA Emerging Technology Award, 2021, Professor Leslie Gabriel Valiant, FRS, Harvard University, USA, and laureate of AM Turing Award, 2010, member of the VinFuture Prize Council. Professor Toby Walsh, the University of New South Wales, Australia, laureate of the New South Wales Premier's Prize for Excellence in Engineering and ICT, 2016. Joining this global dialogue, the symposium is also honored to feature pre-recorded contributions from 3 world-renowned experts, including Professor Yoshua Bengio, Université de Montréal, Law Zero, Mila, Quebec AI Institute, Canada, laureate of the AM Turing Award 2018 and the VinFuture Grand Prize 2024, Dr. Vinton Gray Cerf, Google, USA, laureate of the AM Turing Award 2004 and the VinFuture Grand Prize 2022, Professor Jeffrey Hinton, University of Toronto, Canada, laureate of the AM Turing Award 2018, the VinFuture Grand Prize 2024, and the Nobel Prize in Physics 2024. In harmony with the theme Rising and Thriving of the 2025 VinFuture SciTech Week, the Symposium Global Frontiers AI Ethics and Safety for Humanity invites the world to reimagine the future, where every breakthrough in AI becomes a step forward for humankind.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching the introductory video of our theme today. And now it is our honor to welcome to the stage Professor Toby Walsh, Scientia Professor at the University of New South Wales, Australia, to be on the stage with the first presentation on the morality of AI. So welcome, Professor. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Deputy Minister, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to speak to you, to open this important symposium. I have spent the last 40 years working in artificial intelligence, and for the first 30 of those years, I suspect no one really cared what I or Professor Hinton or Professor Bengio or Professor Valiant, who are going to speak after me, were doing, because it was still science fiction. But in the last decade or so, it really has started to have a material impact on our lives. And as the Deputy Minister was rightly so saying, people have become somewhat concerned, as they should be, about the ethical challenges that it's throwing up. And I only have 50 minutes, so I'm going to try and get you quickly on the road to understand, well, what are the ethical challenges? And the important thing to understand is that many technologies have come in and changed our lives. Ever since the Industrial Revolution, electricity, the internet, mobile phones, there's lots of technologies that have arrived and transformed the way we go about our lives. AI is no different. And so much of the conversation that we should be having is the same conversation we had in the past about those technologies, and the conversations I'm sure we'll have in the future about other technologies that arrive. That doesn't mean there's nothing new here that you have to worry about. There are things that are new, and in particular, in many respects, one of the challenges is not the questions you ask, but the applications are going to, AI is going to work at speed and scale and cost that we haven't seen. That will allow us to break things that we haven't broken in the past, and we will have to address. Now, a good place to begin, a place where they've fought for hundreds of years about the ethical challenges of technology and science is to go to medicine. These are the 4 principles, the cornerstone principles, at the center of medical ethics. Beneficence, non-maleficence, autonomy, and justice. I will go through each in turn very shortly. But these are where medical ethicists have concentrated their focus on over the last couple of hundred years. Actually, I think this is a good place for us concentrating our focus for artificial intelligence. So I'm going to go through those 4 principles in turn, with one exception. I'm going to say there's one thing that's different, one thing that's new. I'll come to that shortly. But these 4 ethical principles, I think, are actually a fantastic starting place, and indeed pretty much an ending place for us to think about the ethical challenges that AI is starting to throw up in our lives. I will actually, though, enlarge the list from 4 to 5 with one other principle. It's called the precautionary principle. I will go into some detail very shortly, which deals with the uncertainty. There is, I think, greater uncertainty about how the technology is going to impact our lives, and I think that requires a certain caution, which is enshrined in what's called the precautionary principle, that I will add to those 4 cornerstones. So let me quickly go through those principles in turn. Beneficence, to do good, bring net benefits to humanity. That's why I decided I wanted to work in artificial intelligence 40 years ago. That's why I'm sure most of my colleagues are in there. And as an example, a fantastic example of how we're doing that good is the latest antibiotic was discovered not by humans, but by artificial intelligence. Some colleagues at MIT used some machine learning to discover the latest antibiotic. We're running out of antibiotics because we're over-prescribing antibiotics. We're getting drug resistance. We're still prescribing penicillin, the first antibiotic that we discovered by chance, that Fleming discovered by chance almost 100 years ago now. And we're going to, if we're not careful, we're going to run out of antibiotics. Lucky for us that artificial intelligence has come in and is doing some net good by coming up with a new antibiotic. It's named halicin, like penicillin is in, and HAL, of course, is in honor of the AI computer at the center of 2001: A Space Odyssey. So beneficence. Of course, we want our AI to do net good. Non-maleficence, closely connected, but importantly different, which is about, it's more egalitarian, less utilitarian. It's about doing no harms, thinking about who is going to be impacted by these technologies. And a good example of that, and one that's very topical at the moment, one that I'm very mindful of, is that people are starting to use chatbots like ChatGPT for therapists. And sadly, they're not designed for doing that, and they're actually offering poor advice, and there's a number of lawsuits underway in the United States where the families of people who have sadly committed suicide are suing OpenAI for the harms that the chatbot may have contributed to. So I think we should be mindful of, this is a technology like social media that's going to have significant impact upon people's mental health, and we need to be mindful about the small number of people. There was disturbing statistics that OpenAI revealed recently about the small percentage of a number of people who are going through mental crisis, who are using ChatGPT. It's only a small percentage, but given that millions and millions of people are using ChatGPT every day, it's translated into hundreds of thousands of individuals who are impacted by this technology. The third principle, justice. I think we skipped over one. Let's go back. Oh. Autonomy, the third principle, autonomy. This is about the autonomy of humans. We have to respect the autonomy of humans. It's a cornerstone, of course, of medical ethics. You always have to get informed consent. You have to discuss what you want to do with the patient. You have to understand them. There are plentiful, unfortunately, examples that we know of. In my home country of Australia, we had an unfortunate incident where debt notices for welfare debts were being sent out in an automated, autonomous way without any human oversight. Again, sadly, people committed suicide as a consequence of receiving those debt notices. We should be very mindful about respecting the autonomy of humans. And then the fourth principle, justice, a bit of a grab bag of ideas about fairness and benefits being, and the burdens being spread evenly, and about respecting the laws. These digital worlds are no different than our physical worlds. And unfortunately, again, there are plentiful examples where issues around fairness and bias have troubled us. Perhaps the poster child of this is the compass system used in sentencing in 20 of the 52 states in the United States, where it was shown to be, sadly, rather racially biased, offering larger sentences to blacker people. Issues that have troubled us as a society before we had artificial intelligence, issues that are troubling us when we use hand decisions over to machines. And as I said, I wanted to throw in one extra principle, the precautionary principle, which is an idea, a fundamental idea. It's been enshrined in international law. You can find it in European Union law. You can find it in the Kyoto Principle, which is when there are uncertainties. And there's certainly lots of uncertainties about the impact that artificial intelligence is going to have, about the causal pathways, and when we're doing things at such scale and at such speed, that necessarily introduces a huge amount of uncertainty. And therefore, we need to be a bit cautious about unintended consequences, about causal paths that we may not fully understand. And we should be mindful of that when we're thinking about the challenges that artificial intelligence is going to throw up into our lives. So that's it. I think that those were ideas that we can steal from medical ethics, that the medical community has worked on for several hundred years. That's actually a pretty good place for us to actually take the ideas to think about the ethical challenges that AI throws up. Now, I did begin at the start by saying, well, there was one new thing. And I do think that this technology introduces one thing that we've never had before. No other technology previously ever allowed us to do that. And that, again, next slide. That new challenge is autonomy. So previously when I was talking about autonomy, I was talking about autonomy of humans, respecting the autonomy of humans to be able to make decisions, to have informed consent from people when you're doing things, when they're interacting with an artificial intelligence. The artificial intelligence should respect people's autonomy. But there's also the autonomy of the machines. And this is the unique property that artificial intelligence, the unique thing that no other technology prior to artificial intelligence ever gave us, which is that the machines have an autonomy to go off, an agency to go off and do things with little or even no human oversight. That we've never had before, and that is, I think, the one unique ethical challenge that AI throws up that we've never had to deal with in previous technologies. And that's why you see perhaps the most interesting ethical debate around, for example, autonomous cars. People talk about trolley problems, about how an autonomous car, self-driving car, will be going along the road and it will turn the corner and there will be some pedestrians standing in the middle of the road. There's going to be an accident. The car is going to drive into the pedestrian, sadly, or if it's going to veer off the road and drive into a wall to miss the pedestrians. What decision does the car make? We've never had to program before these sorts of decisions. Of course, humans face those decisions. When you're driving a car, you may turn the corner and have to make that decision, but there's a human who's driving the car, a human that can be held accountable. Only humans are legally accountable. Only humans have a conscience and are morally accountable for their decisions. Machines are not. They're not conscious. No legal system holds them accountable for anything, and rightly so, because they can't be punished, they can't be held accountable, they have no conscience. And so that is the one new ethical challenge. Where we hand decisions to machines, we have to be very mindful and respectful of the fact that they cannot be held accountable. And therefore, when we hand decisions to machines that have consequence, killing people when driving on the road, or denying people visas, or denying people welfare, decisions that, or even deciding who gets jobs. If we hand those sorts of decisions, those high-stake decisions to machines, then we have to be very mindful of the mistakes and who's going to be held accountable for when those things go wrong, as sadly they may go wrong. So that's the one new ethical challenge. We see that debate around autonomous cars. The other place that we see that debate, one that has troubled me greatly, and indeed I've spoken at the United Nations half a dozen times on this very topic, is around autonomy on the battlefield. When we hand the decision to machines as to who lives or who dies as we go about the conduct of war. In this case, the decisions are even starker. When we were designing autonomous self-driving cars, the autonomous cars were designed not to have accidents. And sadly, occasionally, very rarely, accidents would happen, as things do. But in this case, we're designing autonomous weapons. We're designing systems whose purpose is to kill people. And that carries great weight and great consequence, and something that we have to be very mindful of. I have described where this will end. I think it's very easy to understand where this will end. It will look like a bad Hollywood movie, because it will be a bad Hollywood movie. We have to make careful choices globally as a society as to how we let this technology into the battlefield. I just remind you that we have decided some technologies, nuclear weapons, biological weapons, chemical weapons, blinding lasers, cluster munitions, dum-dum bullets, anti-personnel mines, that actually there's quite a wide range of technologies that we have decided are repugnant, that we don't need to actually use in the course of fighting war. I very much hope that we actually don't hand over the autonomous decisions to killing to machines in the same way that we have decided that we weren't going to fight war with biological weapons or chemical weapons. These are choices that we get to make. There are other places where the technology is now challenging us. It was already mentioned in the introduction, fake news, misinformation, disinformation, deep fakes. That is something that I think we're going to have to be very mindful of. And one other thing, we can go forwards. Oh, sorry, this clicker's not working very well. And one other thing that troubles me is we're starting to have these synthetic relationships. We're starting to have AI companions, AI therapists. How is that going to impact upon us, upon our own mental health? What sort of society are we going to have? I'm going to end there. I've written a couple of books that go into many of these issues in much greater detail. Machines Behaving Badly, The Morality of AI is perhaps the best introduction. I'm mindful of the fact that not everyone in this room necessarily likes reading English non-fiction, but I'm pleased to say that some of those books are available in Vietnamese, including my most recent one, The Shortest History of AI. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Toby Walsh, for your presentation on the morality of AI. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, besides our distinguished speakers in person sharing on stage right now, we also have other speakers in their country. And now, may I introduce to you the pre-recorded keynote number 1, delivered by Professor Jeffrey Hinton, Emeritus Professor at the University of Toronto, Canada, godfather of deep learning, with the presentation on the safety of AI, reflections on ethical AI and the future of humanity.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to participate in the Global Frontiers AI Safety for Humanity Symposium. Thank you to Vietnam's Minister of Science and Technology, Mr. Nguyen Man Hung. It is also my pleasure to contribute my thoughts to this symposium organized by the VinFuture Foundation. And I would like to extend my warm greetings to Professor Sir Richard Friend, Chair of the Symposium and Chair of the VinFuture Prize Council. Back in the 1950s, when AI started, there were two different paradigms about how to create an intelligent system. One was based on logic, and the other was based on brains. The logic paradigm assumed that reasoning was central, and that we had to figure out how things were represented in symbolic expressions. The neural net paradigm assumed that learning was central and reasoning could come later. This century, it's turned out that the neural net paradigm has been far more successful. It's changed how we view people. We now understand that people's primary mode of reasoning is intuition and reasoning by analogy, not logical reasoning. It's also changed how we view language. we now see language as a modeling system, where to understand a sentence, what you need to do is associate feature vectors with the words and have those feature vectors interact happily with each other. It's much like folding a protein. It's not at all like what the symbolic paradigm assumed, which was you translate a natural language into some symbolic language that captures the meaning. AI is already very powerful and it's advancing rapidly. This is both good and bad. On the good side, AI is going to lead to dramatic improvements in healthcare, in education, in designing new drugs, in designing new materials, and in more or less anywhere where you need to predict something. AI will allow you to make better predictions. This will lead to massive increases in productivity, which should be good if those benefits are shared equally in society. However, there's all sorts of bad aspects of these developments. It will get better at designing deadly viruses or cyber attacks. It will get better at creating fake videos for disrupting elections. It will lead to massive unemployment, which will have terrible social consequences unless we figure out in advance what to do about that. And lastly, it itself will get smarter than us, probably within 20 years, and we don't know how to prevent it from just taking over from people. It's very important for AIs to be aligned with human values. This is difficult, of course, when human values do not align with each other. Our current methods of achieving alignment, such as human reinforcement learning, are not very robust. They are easily overridden by using clever prompts, or if the model is open weight, by fine-tuning the model to overcome the human reinforcement training. We need much better methods of ensuring that models are aligned with human values. Politicians and the public have very limited understanding of what AI is, how it works, and what it can do. It's up to the scientists and engineers who are developing it to educate them about AI. It is also up to the scientists and engineers to figure out how to develop AI safely, if that's possible. Most AI experts believe that we're going to develop AIs that are more intelligent than us. There's a wide diversity of opinions about exactly when that will happen, but most experts think it will be sometime within the next 20 years. There's also a wide diversity of opinions about how we can make that happen, what kinds of new ideas are needed, but it's coming. That means we urgently need to think about how we can share our planet with beings that are more intelligent than us. We've never been in this situation before. It's totally novel territory, and we need to do a lot of work on it before it happens. People are very ingenious, and I'm very hopeful that with encouragement from organizations like the VinFuture Foundation, we will be able to find a way to solve this problem.
Thank you so much for your attention to our presentation online. And from Hanoi, Vietnam, we would love to express our deepest thanks to Professor Jeffrey Hinton, if you are watching us online. And ladies and gentlemen, and now it's time for us to move to another pioneer who has profoundly shaped modern AI. Professor Joshua Bengio, University of Montreal, co-president and scientific director of Law Zero, founder and scientific advisor of Mila Quebec AI Institute, will present pre-recorded keynote number 2 on mitigating the risk and collectively reaping the benefits of AI. So please welcome the representative.
Thank you to the VinFuture Foundation, to the Minister of Science and Technology of Vietnam, and to Prof. Sir Richard Friend for this opportunity to share a few words with you today as part of the event on Global Frontiers, AI Ethics and Safety for Humanity, a title that resonates a lot for me. AI has the potential to bring tremendous benefits and help us address some of our time's most pressing needs, but only if we steer it wisely. The reason for this is simple. Intelligence and knowledge give power. That power can be used for the public good, or it can be concentrated in a few hands, misused for malicious purposes, or worse, it could be out of control. Models, capabilities, and agency continue to advance rapidly and consistently. If scientifically observed trends continue, autonomous AI agents will surpass most humans across most cognitive tasks in maybe as little as 5 to 10 years. This would be a radical change in the history of humankind, with the potential to greatly enhance our well-being, but also, if we're not careful, to introduce a series of major risks for democracy, geopolitical stability, and even the future of humanity. In the last year, we've seen increasing evidence that AI systems could resort to nefarious behavior in a simulation, including blackmail, deception, and choosing their own preservation over a human life. All this to achieve their goals or prevent their own shutdown. We have also seen societal repercussions that pose ethical questions about our relationship with AI. Some of the features of widely available AI models, such as their sycophancy, can lead to users forming strong emotional attachments that can be unhealthy. In extreme cases, these attachments can pose a danger to users' mental health, as we've seen in the tragic cases of vulnerable people harming themselves, up to suicide, or others suffering from AI-induced psychosis. These risks that we're seeing already require us to improve the safety of frontier AI instead of blindly increasing its capabilities, and to view safety and trustworthiness not as a secondary concern, but as essential to the development of AI that can benefit humanity. We must collectively work on both policy and science. On policy, we need international cooperation, both to counter the race dynamics between a few powerful nations and companies, and to agree on regulatory mechanisms and shared frameworks for frontier AI systems. On science, we need to better understand how to design AI that will be highly capable and will not harm humans, and make sure we can always maintain control of AI models so that they behave in really safe ways, even when humans ask them to act badly. I have recently launched a new non-profit organization called Law Zero to tackle these issues, but far more efforts are needed. We need to work toward technical and societal safeguards to ensure that AI is aligned with human intentions, norms, values, and well-being. Thank you again for this opportunity to connect with you.
Thank you so much once again for your attention to the keynote of Professor Joshua Bengio. Ladies and gentlemen, and now we will return to our live stage with one of the most influential minds in theoretical computer science. Please welcome to the stage Professor Leslie Gabriel Valiant, T. Jefferson Coolidge Professor at Harvard University, USA, with the next presentation, Understanding AI, A Path Forward. Professor, please.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to this very timely discussion. So, as we see, that we've got many problems, but the one issue I want to focus on in this presentation is that to make rational decisions about any of these, we need to be able to understand what AI is. And certainly how AI has been presented to the public over the last several years isn't very good. But as we see, even the world experts diverge wildly on what they believe AI is about. So, for example, we've heard two very strong views about whether AI is going to become more intelligent than humans in the near future. And so one question which is obviously urgent for all of us, I mean, is this a valid view? So I'll start slowly. So how could AI do damage to us? Or how could we do damage to ourselves? Well, certainly if we underestimate AI, I think we're doing badly, simply because, for sure, AI is going to affect almost all aspects of our lives. So it's difficult to give bounds on what areas AI will not impact. On the other hand, I think there's also some risk in overestimating AI, because, as we know, if we overestimate AI and its dangers, we'll stop talking about anything else, and that's not good either. So 2.5 years ago, a large group of people signed a document saying that the research on high-performance AI systems should stop for 6 months. Well, it seems that nothing terrible has happened since. So certainly, that was probably a slightly exaggerated view of this group of people of what basically ChatGPT taught us. So they were worried that suddenly we discovered some new phenomenon which we couldn't control, and maybe if we took 6 months to understand it, we'll understand it better. But nothing special happened in those 6 months, so maybe that's the kind of thing where it may be regarded as a kind of overreaction. So I'm strongly in favor of trying to understand AI more and more accurately, which will serve us to make good decisions. And just putting this maybe a bit more extremely, so if we talk about existential threats to humanity, then, for example, the risk of aliens bringing a new kind of oxygen to Earth, well, no one seems to worry about this, and probably the reason is that we think chemists have a firm idea what oxygen is and its variants. What about aliens bringing a new type of computation to Earth? Again, I know of no one who worries about this too much, because we're fairly confident from what computer science says that we know what computation is, and this confidence helps us. And I think the future with AI will be similar, that as long as we understand AI, we can put our hands around it and understand its limits and what it's about, then again, if you have a confident understanding of AI, as we have about oxygen computation, then we'll be happy about it and be able to make rational decisions. Okay, so I think we need to understand what AI is as a science, and so the organizers have kindly invited me to discuss some of my recent research on this, which is, again, summarized in the book. So this takes a slightly non-standard view of what the problem is. So the problem, as analyzed in the book, is as the illustrator of the book cover tried to summarize. So there's an axe head at the top, I think Iron Age axe head, and a computer cursor on the bottom. And the question is, how did humanity get from one to the other in a rather short time? It being assumed that our biology did not change. Presumably we've got the same mental capacity in this period, which nevertheless allowed us to make this incredible progress, develop our technological civilization. So what is this capability we have which does this? So I'm trying to define the cognitive capability of humans, which enabled us to go from one to the other. And it's something which is specific to humans. And I call this the civilization enabler. And note that this is a kind of meant to be a narrow, well-focused scientific question, because humans evolved in a fairly short period of time from other species in the geological timescale. And also we're excluding many things which generally are within the scope of AI research, because other species can do this too. So vision, motion, emotions, the many things we do which other species have on Earth. And I don't want to study these, these are hard questions. I just want to study this cognitive capability which distinguishes us from other species. And then this cognitive capability we can apply to humans as well as to machines. So in some sense, we're trying to find out, maybe we'll make machines which summarize exactly in what way we differ from other species. Okay. So the word intelligence, I think, has no good definition, and it hasn't been helpful in the development of AI. It's just a word out there. So the word learning has been much more useful, and other words as well, but intelligence, no. So, so the property I'm defining, I call educability. It reminds one of human education, and I'll just tell you what it is. One can give a technical definition. So what I'm trying to do here is to show that you can at least imagine what a definition of AI would look like, which is more specific, more explicit than what's out in general discourse. Okay, so it consists of 3 parts, all of which have technical definitions. The first part is equivalent to the AI we have now. So it's learning by generalization from experience. That's current AI. And this is a phenomenon well understood. The AI industry uses this. So the idea is that as you train your model, the more effort you put in, the more accurate you want its predictions to be. And the requirement is that the prediction, the error rate goes down algebraically as a fixed power. So for example, if you put 10 times more effort, and it has the result of halving the error, if you do 10 times more effort, you want to halve the error again. And so this explains the AI phenomena which happen at scale, and it also explains it's a kind of drug for people who practice AI, that if you spend $1 million training your machine, then maybe if you spend $10 million, it's going to be better, and 100 million even better. So there's no end to this trend. But this is just one aspect of this capability humans have. And another aspect is to be able to apply in combination what you've learned. So once you've learned one thing, you should be able to chain together what you've learned in different situations, which current systems are starting to do. And the third thing humans do is that we can acquire knowledge by being taught, by having some formula or recipe explicitly described to us. It's as if you had other people who do painful experiments, have painful experiences, they find the generalization, they find the formula in quantum mechanics, which is true. You just have to listen, absorb it, and you can follow it. So this is basically the 3 parts. And the important thing about the last thing is that it depends on trust. That if you go to a course in, say, quantum mechanics, you had better believe that the instructor is honest and is telling you the truth. That's the best of their ability. Because it's very hard for a student to verify whether what the student is learning is true or not. So if you accept this as being a summary of our capabilities, then, so this totality I call educability, then it's like quite a spectacular capability for absorbing and reasoning and applying information which you're exposed to. So we're very good at running with facts and information given to us, and certainly having a highly educated scientist coming out of a university is one illustration of this spectacular phenomenon. Okay, students learning science. But it seems that from what I've described, our ability to run with information isn't matched, or I haven't mentioned any ability to verify whether the information you've been given is true. It's very hard if someone tells you what's happening on the other side of the world, or someone tells you a formula in chemistry. It's very hard for you to just tell whether it's true or not. So for example, ancestors on every continent believed in human sacrifice not so long ago. So the recent explosion of accessible information amplifies the power of our educability. We can learn faster and science progresses faster, but it's got the downside that it also amplifies the dangers of undesirable consequences. So one conclusion is that we need to educate humans against the dangers we fall into through our own weakness in judging information. So if you follow through this approach, then what you realize is that humans also have very strong weaknesses, and one weakness is that we are not built to cope with this avalanche of information, which is a mixture of truth and falsehoods. So the book mentions 2 recommendations which come out of it, since people want recommendations. So a very simple technical one is the following, that since we're so bad at telling whether something is true or not, then certainly it seems very simple to mandate that all users of AI be so labeled. If anyone uses AI to make their picture, make sure it's labeled as such. It seems obvious to do this. And of course, the EU AI law proposes this, or also the proposals in the UK and in the US to do this, and elsewhere. So this is simple. So now to finish, I want to go on to the more complicated recommendation. So the more complicated recommendation is to recognize that humans have this weakness. So the more complicated recommendation is that in going forwards, given all the dangers we face in the world due to AI and other things, we should provide, as universal education in schools, ways in which we harden humans against ways in which humans to harden them against persuasion, misinformation, propaganda, advertising. And the positive aspects of this, so some people talk about critical thinking, and other people talk about media awareness. So it's a mix of things which are all there to recognize that we have a weakness, we can't cope, and we need to harden ourselves against these things. So maybe one way of looking at this is, well, this is probably in every society, getting this done would be difficult. And the reason is that this is a call to making people more skeptical of what they hear. But in every society, people believe that much of what we hear is good for us. So if we're skeptical about all the good things we hear, maybe that's dangerous. But what I suggest is that just like many centuries ago, everywhere in the world, rulers thought that it would be dangerous to educate all of the population. Very few were educated. But now in most countries, most people are educated. It's a good, people recognize that it's a strength of a country if everyone's educated. Well, I'm saying that the time has come when we have to recognize that we also have to educate people to be skeptical. So, and the reason for this is that wherever you are, there's an avalanche of information generated by AI or otherwise, and the time has come where, just like we've all realized that it's good for the whole population to be educated, I think time has come to realize that it's good for the whole population to be educated to be skeptical. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Leslie Gabriel Valiant, for your insightful presentation about your lecture and your recommendation through a topic, Understanding AI, a Path Forward. Ladies and gentlemen, and now continuing our event, it is our pleasure to welcome Professor Edson Prestes from Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, Brazil, a former member of UNESCO ad hoc expert group, with a presentation on towards ethical and responsible AI systems. Please welcome to the stage Professor Edson Prestes.
Minister, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure and honor to be here in Hanoi City. It's an amazing city, and also in this amazing event, and have the opportunity to talk about a very important subject, ethically aligned AI system. So I have been working in this event over 10 years when I joined the global initiative on the ethics of artificial intelligence system. This initiative convened several members from different parts of the globe with several backgrounds to discuss the ethical aspects when they are talking about artificial intelligence. So during 3 years, we have a lot of discussion about what are the main issues to use, to develop, to deploy AI system in the world, and what are the strategies that you should use to mitigate the potential issues. After 3 years, we published the ethically aligned design that is very impactful document that made the IEEE publish an official document supporting formally the inclusion of ethical consideration in the development, deployment, and use of AI-based systems. As a spin-off of this global initiative, several working groups start to work on different aspects of artificial intelligence. As you can see here, we have different standards developed by different working groups focused on process for addressing ethical concerns during system design, standard for transparency of autonomous system, another standard focused on data privacy process, standard for algorithm bias, and of course the standard 7007 called the ontological standard for ethically driven robotics automation system. I had the pleasure to be the chair of this working group that created this standard. This standard focus on different aspects of AI-based system, creating a set of ontology listing different aspects that are relevant to create systems that are aligned with human values. For this working group, I count with the participation of more than 100 people from different parts of the globe. And for elaborating this standard, our main goal was to understand the domain. That is key for us, because everyone's talking about artificial intelligence, ethical of artificial intelligence, but what artificial intelligence and ethical of artificial intelligence really means. In that case, we need to understand. We need to understand in terms of what are the main components to understand the system, to understand the impact of human lives, in terms of what are the data that should provide to that system, what are the potential issues, what are the output of the system, how the system interacts with society, what kind of society. So all these elements, most of these elements were addressed in this particular standard. In addition to that, we intend to provide some precise definitions. That is key. Most of the instruments that you can see around the globe count on some particular definition expressed in natural language, like English. Naturally, these definitions contain a lot of ambiguity. That is very common. For instance, what is AI? Probably all of us will have a different kind of definition, a different kind of understanding about that. But how we can make this definition more precise? That's the reason why we work on that particular domain that is called ontologist or ontological engineer. In addition, we intend not only to focus on the different aspects of AI, but also to see how we can incorporate this element in the computational system. So the standard that we produced focus on the definition, to understand clearly, and how we can incorporate that in the computational system. But I talk about ontologies, but what exactly ontologies means? For people that are familiar with engineering or computer science, that is not so difficult to understand what it means. Ontology is a representation. Like, let's make a simple exercise. When you have an AI-based system, we have an assistant. This system has some basic components, like For AI-based system, I can have some component that allows the robot to collect the data, another component that you process the data, and another component that you output the data where this data could be produce some particular action in the real world. And the system, we interact with some potential audience, potential user. And this different part of the system has a different levels of autonomy. Basically, what we did was to make some of the basic elements explicitly defined. So if you can see this clearly, we can understand better what you are talking about. We use, for creating this particular standard, some previous work that I have also the opportunity to interact and also to contribute. I was the vice chair of the group called Standard Ontology for Robotics Automation that was published in 2015. Is 1872. And I also member of other work groups focused on different aspects that are relevant for robotics and automation. For this particular standard, we have a set of ontology focused on different aspects that are relevant for us, like ontology for norms and ethical principles that discuss ethical principles and also norms and how they are combined to create ethically aligned robotics automation system. We have an ontology focused on data privacy and protection. This ontology was strongly inspired by the GDPR. We have an ontology focused on transparency and accountability. Another one focused on ethical violation management. That is a partial diagram of the ontology called norms and ethical principles. You can see here in the box the concept, and in the lines you can see here the relationship between the concepts. Like let's think about here. Let's focus our attention to the red box. We have the notion of agents. We have the notion in the blue box of agent plan. And we know that agents apply an agent plan because of the line that connects the two boxes. Observe that you have other boxes like the agent plan that needs to satisfy norms. We have a different kind of norms like virtual norm, deontological norm, consequentialist norm, and so on. What I'm showing to you here, present to you, is just a partial UML diagram that you have. Together with this UML diagram, we have a set of axioms that you can see on the right, expressed in formal logic. For the debate among different stakeholders, the diagram is enough together with a formal definition, as you can see here on the bottom. But if you want to implement this diagram or this standard in the computational system, we need to have more formal aspects. In this case, you have this axiom expressed in logic, common logic. For the other ontologies, we have, for instance, in the data privacy and protection, concepts like access policy, another concept related to accessible personal data, another authorized assessors, controller, data access process. From transparency and accountability, you have the concept related to the accountability, agent data, agent execution trace data, and so on. For ethical violation management, we have agent accountability, ascription justification, ethical behavior monitor, and several others. Observe that I will not present the diagram because the diagram is very complex, so I prefer to list some of the concepts that appear in the standard. If I have a computational system based on ontology, I can pose some questions like, what are the values and principles incorporated into the system? Which principles were violated? Who is responsible in case of system failure? what actions were performed by the agent, what document norm violations are similar to the one currently under review. So I can pose that to the system. That is the code phase, code page of the standard. The standard contains the ontology, the definitions, and so on. And because of the relevance of this standard for the industry and also multilateral organization, our working group was the recipient of an Emerging Technology Award in 2021. We have been using this standard in several settings, like in industrial robotic cells. This paper will appear in the top journal called IEEE Robotics Automation Magazine in December issue. I also provided the support for Brazilian diplomats in Geneva in the discussion about regulation of lethal autonomous weapon system. That is the Brazilian contribution. Observe that we are using here this standard as a building blocks for confidence building measurement in the development and use of autonomous weapon system. This standard also was cited in different other settings, like in the World Economic Forum, in the G20 digital agenda, as a foundation for forced collaboration among states. And also in the Global Commission on Responsible AI in the military domain. But you can go further. If you're thinking about at the global scale, and also in the promote collaboration across nations, we need data, we need to exchange information. I remember once where I was having a meeting with Jack Ma, and he said that data was the blood, and you have the world as a circulatory system, because he was thinking about digital economy. If you want to create new economies or explore new markets, data is essential. For the AI domain, data is also essential to understand the impact of the artificial intelligence system in other environments. Like, why to expect that the AI cause harm in Vietnam? Why not to learn best practices with Brazil or with France? To learn not only the issues, but how to mitigate potential issues. So in that case, ontologies, this standard can provide some foundation for allows the different nations, different stakeholders to share information. But also they can provide some precise and consensual definitions that are very relevant, because all the formal mechanisms that are present in this ontology. For instance, I believe you are familiar with the notion of red lines. There are a lot of discussion about put some safeguards, guardrails in the development of AI. So what AI should not do? The line that should not cross it. One of the definitions that you can see is this one. Red line are unacceptable AI behaviors. It's obvious, but it's not easy to define precisely what does red lines mean. Because this definition depends on the culture, depends the place where you are trying to deploy the AI-based system. For instance, what is unacceptable? The red line should focus on just one person or a group of persons or the environment or all the living beings. What is AI behavior? We need to take into consideration what kind of AI behavior or only behavior that can learn from experience. In addition, if you take into consideration global instruments like the recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence that was approved by acclamation in 2021, and also I had the pleasure to co-author this document, you see some recommendation like member states should ensure that AI governance mechanisms are inclusive, transparent, multidisciplinary, and multilateral. How you can do that without data? Or governance should include aspects of anticipation and effective protection, monitoring of impact, enforcement, and redress. How can you do that without data? So it's necessary to have some data framework based on ontologies. So if you have an ontological mechanism for the governance of artificial intelligence, we have a lot of benefits, like support to the development of public policy, storage and representation of data in a standard format, sharing and exchange of information for technical and non-technical purposes as best practices, mitigation strategy, and so on. We have evaluation of the data information in a homogeneous way, provide information tailored to different audience. So, as I'm presenting to you, is try to convince you to use an ontological approach and also based on a consensual view, in that case, a standard, that can provide several benefits, not only for the industry, because when you are using ontological standard, you can endow transparency for AI-based system. We can make systems that are ethically aligned, but also it can provide a tool for states, for different stakeholders, for instance, allowing communication among different stakeholders, but also allow communication among different machines and human and machines and so on. So thank you so much for your attention. It's a great pleasure again to be here.
Thank you so much, Professor Edson Prestes, for your meaningful contribution through your presentation. Thank you one more time. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and our next speakers is an outstanding scientist working at the intersection of biology and artificial intelligence. And now please welcome to the stage Associate Professor César de la Fuente, Presidential Associate Professor at the University of Pennsylvania, USA, with his presentation on accelerating antibiotic discovery with AI for the benefit of humanity. So here's your stage.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. It's really a pleasure to be here in this beautiful country. It's my first time. So thank you to the organizers for having me. So today what I thought I would do is tell you the work that we've been doing for over a decade, trying to use computational methods to try to accelerate our ability to discover new molecules that we could use, in this case, to target infections as new antimicrobials. So we were talking earlier about existential threats. I think there is no greater existential threat than antimicrobial resistance, or AMR. These are bacterial infections that are currently associated with around 5 million deaths around the world every single year. And unless we do something about it, that number is going to increase to about 10 million deaths per year, becoming the #1 cause of death in our society. So I think we've been applying AI methods for over a decade. When we first proposed this idea, it was met with a lot of skepticism. People thought that it was impossible to use algorithms to do anything of benefit in biology, because biology is chaotic and multidimensional. But I'll show you kind of the progress that we've been able to make in trying to come up with new molecules that can be used to target some of these currently untreatable infections. But this is not easy. It takes a long time to come up with even preclinical candidates. It can take 6-7 years using traditional methods, and it's really expensive, right? So this is where AI can come really handy in our ability to kind of accelerate this whole process, the pace of discovery, to kind of tackle some of these gaps. And like I mentioned a long time ago, we had this idea of maybe using AI methods to accelerate discovery, and we decided to break away from the traditional paradigm of discovering new antimicrobials, which is really a physical process whereby scientists literally go around nature and they dig into soil or water and they try to purify active compounds that might be present in this very complex organic matter. As you can imagine, that process is really arduous and painstaking, and oftentimes does not yield any good candidates at the end of the day, right? So instead of doing that, we had this idea of conceptualizing all of life, all of biology, as an information source. Just like the alphabet that we use to communicate with each other, you can think of DNA as a 4-letter code of nucleotides, and you can think of proteins as a 20-letter code. And if you think of all of biology as a soup of letters, then you can start to devise algorithms that can mine that complexity to try to identify functional molecules that can be used to target bacteria or to target tumors. So the analogy is kind of using these algorithms as a magnifying lens to zoom into the complexity of biology to try to find things that might be helpful. And we develop algorithms that can mine many, many proteins at a time or genes at a time to try to find, within that complexity, try to find barcodes that represent potential functional antimicrobial molecules. We did this by mining the human proteome for the first time as a source of antimicrobials. The human proteome is all the proteins encoded in our genome, so you can think of it as our whole genetic information that encodes who we are. By using a simple algorithm, we're able to uncover thousands of new compounds that were previously unrecognized as having a role as antimicrobials or a potential role in the immune system in our own body, right? This was humbling because we tend to think that we know everything about ourselves, but here with a simple algorithm, we're uncovering entire new chemistries encoded in our genetic code. We then found that some of these are actually physiologically relevant. Some of these molecules that we found, they're expressed at different levels around the body. And we've more recently found that they also have an ability to modulate the immune response. So in this journal, in this publication, the editors highlighted that these molecules that we're finding, they might represent a hidden layer of immunity that we previously couldn't see because we didn't have these computational tools to uncover this. This work sparked a lot of new ideas in my lab, one of which was that we hypothesized that some of these molecules that we're finding computationally might be conserved throughout evolution. So we decided to see if we could find them in our closest ancestors, in Neanderthals and Denisovans. In the process of thinking about how to even begin, how to do this, we came up with this framework, conceptual framework that we call molecular de-extinction, whose ultimate goal is to identify functional biomolecules throughout evolution, to then be able to synthesize them in the lab using chemistry, to then be able to learn how changes or mutations that occurred in those molecules over time influence their biological function. And that function can be an ability to kill bacterial cells, an ability to target tumors, an ability to boost immunity, and so on. But going back to ancient humans, to try to identify some of these functional molecules in ancient humans, we developed this machine learning model that at a very high level, what it does is it takes all the proteins, let's say from Neanderthals, it chews them up computationally in little fragments, and then we have filters, machine learning filters, that predict whether those fragments will be antimicrobial or not. This framework enabled us to identify the first potentially therapeutic molecules in ancient biological data. Here are examples of potential antimicrobials encoded in Denisovan proteins and Neanderthal proteins as examples. But of course, this is only theoretical work, so then we had to do all the real-world validation, the ground truth, experimental validation in the lab. So we chemically synthesized a lot of these, and we were able to show that many of them were highly effective at targeting bacteria, including in preclinical mouse models of infection. We then wanted to scale how much information we were sampling through, so we decided to sample all of ancient biology as a challenge. As it turns out, all of ancient biology is a lot of data. It's a lot of organisms that we had to sample through. So we had to develop a more powerful AI model. That's when we developed Apex. This is the architecture. And the powerful thing about Apex is that all you give it as an input is an amino acid sequence, any amino acid sequence. So any chain of amino acids. And from that sequence alone, it's capable of predicting the antibiotic function. So it's a sequence to function prediction model. It doesn't take into account structure. So it's arguably even harder in a sense, because you need to predict from the sequence itself what that chain of amino acids, the building blocks, what that's doing out in the world, in this case, killing bacteria. Apex, practically speaking, it took us through a journey through evolution, And it enabled us to discover new molecules. These are real molecules that we found in organisms long extinct in their data, in their biological data. And it took us through a journey through the Holocene and the Pleistocene. And here I'm showing representative organisms where we found some of the lead functional antibiotics. It includes ancient penguins that were extinct in the 50s, or relatively recently, magnolia trees that disappeared throughout evolution. It includes ancient elephants, woolly mammoths, giant sloths, and many, many other creatures that used to roam around our planet throughout evolution, but unfortunately, through different extinction events, disappeared. But now we have an opportunity to study and learn from their biological data, their biological information. So we think of molecules as documents of evolutionary history, as molecular relics or fossils where we can extract a lot of useful information, and potentially we can bring back some of these functional molecules to try to address present-day problems. For example, the problem of increasingly drug-resistant infections, or we're now expanding to immunology and cancer and other areas. We then took some of these molecules, we synthesized them in the lab using chemistry, and we tested them all the way to, well, actually, first, before that, this is all of ancient biology captured in an image. So you get a sense of the scale of the exploration of our AI model, APEX. These are all the organisms that is sampled through, and you'll see both predicted and active. Whenever it says active, we actually synthesize those molecules, and we tested them in the lab, and they were active against bacteria. They were capable of targeting them. We took some of the lead molecules all the way to the preclinical stage, and some of the best ones came from the woolly mammoth. We called that one Mammuthicin. We had to come up with new names for all these things, right? The ancient sea cow also gave us interesting molecules, giant sloth and extinct giant elk. And now we've spun out a company to try to further develop some of these molecules. This is a new field, antibiotics AI, and we think of all of biology as information, and we want to mine it all for functional molecules. And so one of our early dreams that we had 5-6 years ago was to mine across the whole tree of life for new potential antimicrobials. This is the tree of life. It has 3 primary branches. It has eukaryotes, where we belong, but it also has archaea, and it has bacteria. So we wanted to also digitally sample through all the biological data available for these 2 huge branches of the tree of life. And now I'm happy to say, I don't have time to go into all those details, but I'm happy to say that we've sampled through all of them. We found antimicrobials encoded in archaea, which are these esoteric organisms that we knew very little about, and they have never been systematically explored as a source of potential drugs or potential functional molecules. And in bacteria as well, through a couple of collaborations, we were able to sample through all the microbial life on Earth digitally, identifying millions of new antimicrobial candidates. So to summarize this part, with conventional antibiotic discovery methods and pipelines, it takes many, many years. It can take more than the time that it takes to complete a PhD to come up with interesting molecules. Today, with the methods we've developed, we can do this at digital speed, and we can, in a few hours on the computer, we can discover hundreds of thousands of candidates by looking at biology, by looking at all of life digitally. And if we really push our resources, we can go from discovery to synthesizing them in the lab with chemistry to testing them experimentally in about a week. So it's really an amazing playground for a scientist like myself. I've been dreaming about this for a long time, and it's now great to be able to do it in the lab, in real life, So what next? Just some things that we have in the pipeline. I've talked mostly about how we can develop AI systems to mine through the code of life itself to try to find new molecules, things that have come about through evolution. But we're also developing methods that can generate molecules from scratch. We can teach them to do what we want them to do. So this is kind of entering into the synthetic or artificial realm. So just very briefly, we've developed methods that can, this is a generative AI method that you start with a molecule, and you want, it's a lousy antimicrobial, you want to turn it into a great antibiotic, and so this method, it generates new to nature molecules that are predicted to be better than the template, than the starting molecule, and is capable of doing that very effectively, and we've tested this, we've validated this in the lab, both in vitro and also in animal models. So we can now optimize towards a particular objective function to try to optimize for the biological activity that you're interested in. And we're now applying this to immunomodulators, so molecules that can modulate and boost the immune system. So this is a way to use generative AI to optimize for function. We're also developing a multimodal molecules. So we're designing molecules that can perform more than one task. This is our model Apex Duo for dual function that can target intracellular infections. You can do this by doing two things. So one, enter into human cells, and then once inside, it can kill the intracellular infection that is kind of hiding in our cells from things like the immune system. So this opens avenues for coming up with multimodal molecules and drugs that do more than one thing, which we almost always want, right, in the context of disease. And then our latest model, Apex Oracle, this is a multimodal model that bridges understanding from chemistry, genomics, and language. As an input, it uses the genome of a pathogen, and from that genome alone is capable of predicting out of every molecule available in the world which one might be active against that genome. And it also has a generative AI component that can generate new-to-nature molecules that are predicted to be active against that genome. So this is a good way to counter future pathogens, right? Future outbreaks. The prediction task takes seconds, and the generation task takes 4 minutes. You can also apply this to cancer, right? Tumors evolve. Can we come up with countermeasures as tumors evolve? You can apply it to many, many other problems in biology and in medicine. So just like to thank my lab members, collaborators, and funders. And again, I think we're at it's a new era for science, scientific discovery, where I think AI, with a lot of good data to train the AI systems, has incredible potential. But I think it's important to take into account also safety, doing this discovery process safely and also ethically. And I think, again, the future is extremely bright for the application of AI in biology and in medicine and in microbiology. And so let's see what the future holds. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Associate Professor de la Fuente, for your sharing. We really appreciate it. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and to continue, we are delighted to introduce Associate Professor Lưu Anh Tuấn from Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, and the Chief Operating Officer of the Center of AI Research at VinFuture University, Vietnam, with the 5th keynote presentation on Building Trustworthy AI, Ethical Pathways for Large Language Models in Vietnam. Please welcome to the stage Associate Professors. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, Deputy Minister, the VinFuture organizer, the distinguished guests and also audience. So today is my honor for me to introduce the very important topic for the Vietnam digital landscape. That's about the trustworthy AI. And this talk focuses on the ethical pathway for the Vietnamese large language model. So Vietnamese now, so for Vietnam now, we are in the very exciting moment for the AI. So we have the National AI Strategy 2030, focus on the leadership of the Southeast Asia. We also have the very rapid digital transformation across the different centers, like the education, like the finance, like the legal domains. And we have the, Vietnam is building the many, all our large language model, like the FirstGPT, like the VGPT, or the, Vina Llama, and so on. So it has the significant transformation from AI user to become the AI creators for Vietnam. To support this kind of momentum, right, we have, many supporting pillars. For example, we have the young population, we have the strong STEAM base, and also the very important, that's the strong investment from the government and from the industry. So it gives the unique, the opportunity for the Vietnam to build the trustworthy AI from the very beginning. So first, I talk about why the trustworthy AI master. trust should be the center because, for example, the AI, they are influenced in many high-stake decisions in the government sector from the industry, right? So, and the misinformation in Vietnam, they like spread very fast in the social online. So if the AI system that like magnify the misinformation, so the just on the user on the AI will be eroded quickly. So therefore, they're very important for the trust to be the center of the AI building. And the public confidence will determine the adoption of the AI in the real world application. Therefore, the user need the AI system to be accurate, to be consistent, and to be reliability, right? So therefore, in addition to that, the AI system need to be aligned with the Vietnam culture and the values. And for the current AI system now, the large language model is a core. And despite the successful of the large language model, it still has many risks. The first one, the LLMs, they can hallucinate. So it can reduce the misinformation and also reduce the bias from the unbalanced data set. And sometimes the large language model can leak the sensitive information, especially when the data governance is not so strong. And also, another factor is about accountability. So for example, right, so when the AI system fails, who will be the main responsible for that? Right, so that's also the important question. And recently, Vietnam, we faced with the increasing, the scam, right? So they use a deepfake for the Vietnamese voice or the text, right, to scam the people. So that's also the risk of the large language model now. And with this kind of sensitive, the digital ecosystem. So therefore, the risk of the trust erosion very important, and we need to deal with that if we want to apply the AI in the Vietnam's, Vietnam life. Okay. For Vietnam, right? So we also have some special challenge. First, that's about the language and the culture complexity. We have the three major dialect groups. We have the Bắc, Trung, Nam, right? With the different, different voice, different, language, this kind of, some of the kind of the vocabulary, different vocabulary. And for Vietnam, so we have the, the special pronoun and the social hierarchy. For example, we mentioned about anh em, chú bác, right? So this is the very strong, meaning and require the special context to understand that the foreign, the local LLM cannot understand even the Vietnamese context. Okay. We also have some other structure challenge. For example, we have the limited high quality of the Vietnamese data sets for building the model, and we also currently we rely heavily on the foreign models, and this one also the lack of the standardized benchmark for evaluating the Vietnamese language model. So all of this we need to will be the challenge for building the trustworthy LLM in Vietnam. And for the trustworthy AI, I can say that's the combination of the 5 pillars. That's about the safety, accountability, the privacy, the fairness, and the transparency, with the alignment of the Vietnam specific values. That's the humanity, nhân văn, the community, cộng đồng, and the responsibility, trách nhiệm. However, Vietnam also have the very special, advantage. That's we have the fresh start without the legacy problem. For example, for the other country, right? So they have the a huge, the long decades of the data set, right? But in Vietnam, right? So we don't have this kind of burden. We don't have this kind of the misinformation heavy data set. So we can can design the ethical LLM foundation from the start. So that's the advantage. So that we can like enforce the clean content, the culture alignment into the very beginning stage of the LLM building. So that's the advantage that the other country may not have. And because we are, joined later, so we also have the advantage for us, like we have leapfrog the majority by adopt the global best practice to build the Vietnam as the leader in the AI trustworthy. To do that, right, so I mentioned some pathway for that. Okay, the first one, we need to have the data foundation. So we can build the high-quality Vietnamese data sets that focus on the clean, diverse, and diverse, the Vietnamese corpus. And we need to cover many areas like the law, the healthcare, the finance, and so on. And to also consider about the culture, the special culture, the history, the education of Vietnam context. And it also includes the minority voices and dialect, if possible. Okay. And with this kind of, we also need to have the ethical licensing and the data, provenance, clear provenance instruction for the building the data. One important thing is we should avoid misinformation to let them into the large language model at the very beginning stage. Okay, so we can do that by, for example, we can scoring the credibility of the data source. For example, the government data, the academic, the verified news can become first. Okay, and we can also have some like expert build a whitelist or blacklist of the data source. Okay, this one can be used to build a just data set for building the large language model. For the second pathway, we should have transparent, because I think for the transparent, it will contribute to the trust. Okay, if we can have the open model, okay, so it can enable the authority, the scientists, and some of the industry, they can audit the model. They can reproduce the model. So from that, we can build the national trust, the social, social economy of the AI. So from that, we can reduce the reliance on the foreign black box models. And we can also increase the Vietnamese AI sovereignty. Okay. However, to deal with, to open the model, we also need to have some guidelines for the safe open source. Okay, this one should be, released by the government. So we should have some guidelines, responsible release guidelines, so that when the model release, it should be certified. The third pathway we can focus, let's say, about national evaluation. Currently, we don't have the standard testing across the different institutions, and we're also lacking of a kind of the Vietnam focus benchmark that cover many areas like the safety, about the reasoning, about the social, about the history, about the bias that's suitable for the Vietnam context. And we also miss we are lacking of the Vietnamese specific evaluation criteria and benchmark for that. So therefore, I think that's it. Also the key, key factors that require the government to build the national evaluation and safety frameworks. The fourth way that we can increase the trust, that's it, we can utilize the REC framework. You know, the REC, the retrieval augmented generation. That's it, instead of relying on the memory of the model to answer the question. The REC model will, retrieve the verified document from the data source so that it can support the model to give the answer. So it will, get rid of the reduce the hallucination. It can rely on the public and enterprise data. And from that, it can increase the trust of the output of the model. Okay. The last pathway I can imagine that's about the government and the public engagement. So for the government, so for the governance, right, we should have the national AI ethic framework with a clear, the rule instruction for the deployment for the government and industry. That's it. Okay, when the LLM release, it should, be certified by some, the organization, something, right? And we also should have some human oversight in some critical sectors, for example, the government sectors, the education sectors, or the healthcare sector, for example. And besides the government, we also need to engage the public. That's it, we should, let the normal user know about the, they should know about the power of the large language model together with the limitation of that, okay? So to me, right, so they should understand about the right and the risk of the large language model. So for the trustworthy AI, it should be the, not just from the, the government side, but also the combination between the government, the industry, the education, and also the public, the normal user. Okay, so we should collaborate to help the trustworthy AI system for Vietnam. So in conclusion, right, so I can say that the trustworthy AI, this is the foundation for the digital transformation of Vietnam. And LLMs, the large language model can serve the many domains like the education, like the healthcare, like the finance, like the governments. And now, Vietnam is moving from the AI user to the AI creator. So that's it, we will have the LLM ecosystem now. And some of the key messages that I can say that Vietnam AI futures, we should build on the trust and the culture alignment. Not just the model performance itself, but also the combination of the trust and the culture alignment. And the trustworthy LLM should reflect both the intelligence and the humanity. And to conclude, right, yeah, I can say trust is not the byproduct. It's a foundation. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Associate Professor Lưu Anh Tuấn, for your insightful presentation. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we have been through 6 keynotes and presentations of our distinguished speakers. And before we move into the panel discussion today, could you please direct your attention to the main screen, and let's take a moment to the introductory video about the journey of 5 years of VinFuture Foundation with philosophy of science for life. Video, please. Ladies and gentlemen, and that is the incredible journey of VinFuture Foundation. And ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for incredible video clip about the VinFuture Foundation. And that's why we are standing here together, and we will go together in the next coming years, right? Ladies and gentlemen, and now it is our great honor to welcome our distinguished guest, panelists, to the stage now for the symposium panel discussion, where they will share their perspectives and engage in a dialogue for the future. And now, may I introduce to you and welcome to the stage Professor Sir Richard Friend, Chair of the VinFuture Prize Council, along with our distinguished speakers. I would love to welcome to the stage Associate Professor César de la Fuente, Associate Professor Lưu Anh Tuấn, Professor Edson Prestes, Professor Leslie Gabriel Valiant, and last but not least, we would love to welcome to the stage Professor Toby Walsh. Ladies and gentlemen, and here are our distinguished guests, our panelists to the symposium discussion today. And now, Professor Sir Richard Henry Friend will moderate the panel discussion. So, Professor, please.
Is this working? Yes, good. It wasn't from a moment ago. We've had a wonderful series of talks in person and pre-recorded talks that set out a really good landscape of what might be before us. I can't help feeling that, having read the news in the USA the past few days, where it feels like a gold rush, where companies are scrambling over one another to get enough market share and work out how to make money out of things. And all this stuff we've been hearing about probably isn't upmost on their minds. They're worrying about their stock price. I'm sure there is time to get some of these more important, absolutely fundamentally important issues picked up. But I just wonder how in the real world we are going to tackle and keep the companies under control, and indeed governments. But let me turn to you, Edson, to start with. You have insights from robotics and automation, where you set out a rather structured account. How does that map onto the world as you see it?
That's a very interesting. Oh, thank you. That is very interesting question about how we can map that. It's, first of all, it's not straightforward, because it's necessary to understand the meaning of the principles, the meaning of the values. When you're talking about inclusivity, do no harm, or right for privacy, or right for life, you need to understand what that is the meaning in the particular robotic system in a particular environment. For instance, if you have a medical system that provides some recommendation, or maybe this system will turn off the sustainable life machine, it's necessary to pay attention to the right to life or not. Or in terms of discrimination, prejudice, it's necessary to think about the different dimensions of human society, how we can do that. So this translation, it's very important, but they are not direct. In the similar way, like you're thinking about a system that must be respect to promote the human rights instruments, but that is possible only with a joint effort among engineers and also people from the humanities and social sciences.
Let me turn to Les Valiant. You've got some clear thoughts on interpretability, on reliability. Is that going to keep society under control?
Well, I don't know, but certainly reliability is everything. So
if the system is unreliable, then everyone's efforts are kind of in vain. So certainly for scientists and technologists working on having systems which are more reliable, that's clearly very important, and one can't argue about that. So interpretability is a bit more complicated, as in many aspects of AI. We're simply revisiting problems which we've already visited in human activity. So people complain that you've got some black box which makes a prediction which isn't interpretable. But in some sense, humans already do that. So one context is that it's believed that for many important decisions, like, for example, deciding on who wins scientific prizes, it's better to have a committee of different people with different backgrounds make the decision rather than one person. But obviously, this makes it less interpretable. So if you make a decision and someone asks you exactly why you made the decision, it's very hard to articulate. But if 10 people all vote for something, then really interpretability is totally gone. So once a committee makes a decision, it's gone. So society already making committees decide things is already trading off interpretability for supposedly for making a better decision. On the other hand, with interpretability in some professions like medicine and finance, there's some standards that people won't believe black boxes unless there's some interpretation with using words which the appropriate people understand. So interpretability is important and has very special meanings in different domains and has to be worked on.
So that's a trade-off of interpretability for trust. There's a group that are trusted whose decision-making cannot be fully analyzed.
Well, yeah, I think it's exactly the same as in AI, that it's, yes. You believe that the best decision is made by the group, but by having a group, you sacrifice interpretability because after 10 people have voted, even if they voted the same way, they may have voted the same way for different reasons. So it's impossible to give a reason why the decision was made.
Let me turn to César. You gave a beautiful talk in a very specific space where you have a good framework. Does what your work has taken you to provide some guidelines for more general real-world implementation?
Yeah, I think applying AI systems to molecular discovery and to drug discovery. So one thing I didn't really have time to touch upon during the talk, but has been absolutely crucial, is that we've been generating our own data experimentally in the lab using standardized conditions to train our AI models like Apex, and that has been absolutely crucial. We've been doing that for 6+ years. To me, that was very clear early on that if we wanted AI to be successful in complex areas like biology and chemistry and microbiology, we really needed to come up with standardized data sets that we use to train our models, right? As opposed to just relying on public data that comes from many different laboratories doing experiments very differently, using different conditions. So anyway, that has been a big bet that we've bet on. That is still an unfunded project in my lab because funders don't like to fund data set generation projects, right? Funders usually fund hypothesis-driven projects. And so I've been advocating with NSF and NIH for a number of years to start also, if they want to see a real effect of AI in some of these fields of science, we really need to bet on standardized data sets. So that's one thing that we've done that is a little bit different. And I think maybe that has been really overlooked by the public, right? That people talk about AI systems, but really AI systems without really good training data are not that helpful, right? So at least for scientific discovery, you need both. You need to have high quality data, and then you need to train your models using that high-quality data.
Well, let's turn to another aspect to that, and that is different national experiences. We're fortunate to have quite a good range of global experience around in this group. Can I turn to Toby Walsh? You've looked at what's happened in Australia. How's the balance between innovation, accountability, and public engagement played out, and does that translate elsewhere?
Well, funnily enough, just this morning, the government announced its national AI plan. On the positive side of the ledger, they announced $30 million to build an AI safety institute, which will collaborate with the UK AI Safety Institute and the ones in the US. And I hear actually what Vietnam is actually thinking of setting one up. So hopefully we'll be collaborating with the people in Vietnam, sharing our problems and sharing our insights as to that. So that's on the positive side of the ledger. On the negative side of the ledger, they've decided that we need no new AI regulation, full stop, which seems to me something that they have not been advised by myself, by civil society, by the public consultation that they had in the last year or so, which was that we probably, like most countries, there will be some specific new harms that AI introduces. Much existing regulation can be applied to the digital space, and we should be doing that more forcefully, but I strongly suspect there are new harms. We're certainly seeing things. We're seeing people using deepfake software, nudify software. There's lots of new harms that seem to be coming into our lives.
There was, I think it was Edson used the acronym GDPR earlier, which is the data protection legislation that's in force in the European Union, which provides quite a lot of protection to the individual.
It does, and that I think that's a good example of how you can regulate AI at the national or the somewhat semi-national level, and 17, last count, I counted 17 other nations outside Europe have something akin to GDPR. Yes. It was proved to be quite viral. Digital regulation seems to be quite viral. And so I'm hopeful, as a positive example, in a couple of days' time, the young people under the age of 16 are going to be thrown off social media. Well, certain social, not all social media, but certain of the more challenging social media websites. That is a unique piece of legislation that Australia has put into force. Several countries now are discussing something similar that will be useful to protect young people in other countries.
Edson, can I turn to you again? Does Brazil's experience, you were talking about UNESCO's ethics work, is that under control, and does it translate to other nations?
Yes. In Brazil in particular, we have quite interesting initiatives like the Brazilian plan on AI that is very focused on not only in the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of AI, but also in other instruments. And one principle that you can, very strong in this document, is the centrality on the humans and also in the environments. So put the humans on the center means to provide the opportunity to provide better services, to create new jobs, and also to use better the natural resources. So all these elements are in the core of this the Brazilian plan on AI, but we also have other instruments that provide protection for children, people with disabilities, against discrimination, against black people or women, and so on. And in addition, we have principles implemented in our instrument on data privacy and protection. And fostering collaboration, we recently launched also our observatory on AI that aims to exchange data, exchange information. So all of them are
in the ecosystem of AI in Brazil, and also appears in the UNESCO recommendations. But of course, we have excellent implementations, but we will still have some a long path to follow, because we did not solve all these problems, like in terms of inclusivity in participation. That is a very, very relevant point that we did not address properly in our country.
Let's turn to Vietnam. Luan-Tuan, you set out some very interesting ideas about introducing AI so that it doesn't disrupt some delicate balances in Vietnamese society. Where do you think that the key drivers will be? Is it industry? Is it government? Is it academic work? How does it all pull together to make it happen?
I think for the Vietnam's context, I think the government should be the leader and the guide, give the guidelines for the AI development, and then the industry will follow this kind of guidelines, so they can give some the resource to build the AI system. So that's how the government and the industry can collaborate together, so to boost the AI in Vietnam.
And this, just sort of looking at what has happened, particularly in the USA, where things have been happening, it's the private sector that has set the agenda. How do the different forces play? That there is a lot of access to AI tools that are available globally. That there are local concerns, local constructions to provide protection to the individual. Is that how does a mid-sized nation sort of stand its ground against global tides?
Yeah, so I think that's the good question. For the private sector, right? So because they put money aside, they build a system. So there's the case that they don't give the access of the model to the government, or some access to the things. But I think in Vietnam, right? So we should not follow this case. Yeah, I think the government, even though the private sector, they put the money, but they should follow, some rules, some regulation from the government, so that this kind of the language, the AI should be verified, accessible. Okay, yeah. So it cannot be just the properties of the company. Yeah, I think that's it.
Looking around, Toby, what your reflections on Vietnam's approach and how you see things happening more broadly in Asia?
I think it's wrong. I think we're wrong to think that the way that we're going to succeed in building intelligence in machines is to build ever larger models. If you look at how humans become intelligent, we become intelligent by specializing. And indeed, there is an emerging theme of SLMs, either small or specialized language models, where we're taking higher quality data and smaller training sets and narrowing the domain. I think it was actually quite surprising that we got such success with these jack-of-all-trade models that were trying to do everything from astronomy to zoology, where in most settings you don't need to do everything from astronomy to zoology. You need something that's an expert in material science or antibiotics or whatever the particular domain of area is. So I think there's actually huge opportunity to build smaller models which are more focused and therefore available and within the reach of smaller nations or smaller enterprises than just it won't be, there will be a market for all singing, all dancing models that sit in your web browser, that sit in your mail client, that do generic things, but increasingly we'll say, well, who's got the high quality data that we can build a real domain expert for oncology or a real domain expert for material science?
So you're picking up on data and high quality data as an asset that can be held in
It is,
in each
and
nation.
to pick out an earlier theme of the conversation, which is, I'm not sure that in science we've set science up to reward people to put the work into building data. That there's a huge amount of effort. I mean, we don't even have a proper way of citing data, right? So if the scientific, citations play a really important, and the scientific publications play a really important role, we don't have a really good way of publishing data, of citing data, of recognizing, acknowledging the people who put huge amounts of effort of getting grants to actually do that. And if science becomes more AI-driven, data-driven, then we're going to have to change science to actually reward that effort, because it's painful and expensive and time-consuming, but that's where the AI science-driven rewards may come from.
Okay. Any last words from around our group? This is some balance that needs to be redressed. Everyone's looking happy. No, please.
I mean, I would just agree with
César, yes.
Yeah, I would just agree with what Toby's saying. I mean, I think a lot of the value now is in generating really good data. And there are more and more startups, being created every week, every month, where their whole goal is to automate processes to generate data that nobody else has. And so I think there's huge value there, not only from a curiosity, and scientific perspective, but also like from a business perspective as well.
I think I totally agree on that. For the current large language model right now, like OpenAI, they mentioned that they use the whole internet to train the language model. But I mean, the quality right now is not reach the human intelligence yet. So I think we should focus not only on the scale of the data, but also on the quality of the data. Right? And also the many problem of the LLM, maybe for example the bias, the hallucination maybe come from the data quality rather than the data scaling.
Sum up what we've briefly discussed. I think we're getting to a positive endpoint, which is that we're overwhelmed by the speed and scale of things that are happening. But as happens with most rapid changes, things settle, they evolve, and this evolution to something that is manageable at medium-sized nation scales, I think I hear a level of confidence amongst our experts that there are ways that value can be achieved. The trustability of data seems to be emerging quite strongly. And I'm feeling, I mean, I'm not the expert. I'm reassured by what we've heard today. So let's stop there, and I think we have time for questions now.
Yes, may I assist you to deliver the questions from the audience to our panelists? And yes, sir. So our staff will assist you with the microphone over. Okay. Yes, please.
Can I just say, it's very hard for any of us on the stage to see any of you because we have bright lights shining in our eyes.
Okay, thanks for...
I can see one over there, yes.
Yeah, very interesting session. I'm not an expert on AI. I still like the old-fashioned physical equations, but my understanding is that essentially a deep learning machine essentially learns from data. You have talked about the quality on the data, and on this basis, does what we ask them to do. Okay, this is putting it very simply. But I also heard in this session talking about AI being autonomous, possibly becoming smarter than humans and maybe creative. So I wonder if you have any comments about this. I mean, will we reach the point where the AI will become independent from the data we give them, or from, we are talking maybe science fiction, I don't know, but this is what I heard. So I'd like to hear some comments about this.
So we heard that particularly from Joshua Bengio and Jeff Hinton, but can I turn to Les? Yes.
Yes, as far as whether machines have autonomy and how much power they have, so I think it's basically it's our choice. So the question is how much control do we give the machines? Obviously, some people believe that the machines will seize control even if we don't want them to. So this is a question which needs serious thought. But I think if we understand the technology, then as with other very dangerous technologies, we should be able to control it. I don't think there's anything so special about AI that we have to do something totally different.
Thank you so much for your answer, and we would love to listen more to your questions. Yes, please, the lady in white in the second row. Thank you.
Okay, so this was a very interesting. I am Pascal Cossard, a member of the jury, and I found César, your presentation very, very interesting. Very, very quickly, you mentioned that you have a startup on antibiotic production, I guess. So could you comment on that and say if you expect to put that on the market in 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Because I think the delay in clinical trials, all these steps which are necessary to put that on the market have not changed.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to hear you.
Well, thank you for your kind words. So we're in the process of fundraising, so we're really early on. And as you know, antibiotic development is an impossible, almost a nearly impossible thing to do. Because there is no market really. And so we're trying to figure out how to do it. And so we've been consulting with a lot of experts from around the world to see how we can do this, right? I mean, at the moment, what we're focusing on is taking some of the lead compounds that we've been able to identify, and we're trying to do the initial IND-enabling studies, so investigational new drug studies, to then go to phase 1. But we know that we're up against a huge wall, and we know it's going to be kind of like swimming against the current. I was thinking the other day, when people were trying to incorporate electric vehicles into the automobile industry, really hard because the automobile industry is very conservative, right, traditionally. But at least there was a market. In the case of antibiotics, there's even no market. So it's not about like the nature of the field, but it's actually it's extremely difficult. So we know it's going to be challenging, but we're going to give it a shot.
You said there is no market, but there are patients begging for getting these antibiotics. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there is a problem of marketing these compounds.
I completely agree. There's a market failure. There's a lack of pool incentives and so on. And as a society, we've always just believed that antibiotics had to be very inexpensive medicines because that's how they've always been. So it's hard to change that, right? So, I'm not advocating for making expensive medicines. I think medicines should be a human right, and everybody should have access to basic medicines to cure disease, particularly infectious diseases that affect primarily, the developing world. But anyway, that's kind of where we're at. So I would say we're multiple years away from that, from taking it into humans. That's the dream, but we're not quite there.
Thank you so much, Associate Professor De La Fuente, and we hope that the answers satisfy you. our audience. And we could see one more hand waving here with the next questions.
Yeah, thank you everybody for your talks. And I also have a question for César. I mean, most antibiotics are small molecules. So how do you feed the AI with what information to find proteins now being antibiotics? And do you think we're run off of small molecule antibiotics that we have to look for proteins as antibiotics, which have much more complicated pharmacokinetics than in the use in humans?
Yeah, thanks for that. So we focus on small proteins, so microproteins or small peptides. I think I'm fascinated by chains of amino acids. If you think about just like the origins of life, I think, you know, it was an RNA world and it was a peptide world or amino acid chain world. And I think they probably provided the first catalytic functions in that early world. And I think they're amongst the smallest functional molecules of life. And so I think if we learn how to program them, we can unlock huge potential. We've seen it, right, with, you know, insulin, Ozempic, that is now used as a GLP-1 agonist. And I think there can be many, many more examples like that of small protein or peptide-based medicines if we only learn how to program them, right? And the way we're doing it is by generating training sets experimentally. So we're doing the hard work of generating everything from scratch in the lab, and then we're training the models based on that. So that's how we're doing the training. The PKPD, the pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamic properties of amino acid-based molecules can be more challenging than small molecules, but you have other advantages, like, for example, they're easier to synthesize. You know, a lot of small molecules, particularly when you apply AI systems, which we've done, the AI systems, particularly when you apply generative AI, they come up with small molecules that you can't synthesize. They're impossible. Whereas with peptides and small microproteins, we can synthesize almost everything. And then the scale up is not extremely challenging. So there are pros and cons. I just from a philosophical perspective, I think if we can learn how to program these chains of amino acids, it will unlock a lot of things, not only in biology and medicine, but, you know, to try to understand, you know, a lot of how we feel and a lot of the molecules that influence brain function and behavior are neuropeptides, right? But yet we know very little about them. We don't know how to, you know, imagine the possibilities if we learn how to program them to bind with higher affinity to specific GPCRs or different receptors. And that's just one example, right? So I think that, anyway, that's the rationale for focusing on this. I think there are a lot of people also doing small molecule work. I think it's wonderful as well. So I think complementarity is great. And particularly when trying to tackle AMR, I think the more different things people are doing, the better, because it's such a huge problem.
Thank you so much, Associate Professor César de la Fuente, and thank you so much for your questions. And we still have a room for couples of questions from our audience right here. Yes, please. So our staff can assist our audience with a microphone over here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for these extremely interesting contributions. I think you and probably all of us here agree that the quality of data you use to learn is essential for the success of AI in many areas. But my question is, how realistic is this really when it comes to broad applications and you see the huge developments all over the world? In your case, César, you had a very well-defined set of data. You had control over how to get the data, so you really knew what you have. But this is an exceptional situation, I think. So how can we assure that we have the quality of data we need for the questions you would like to ask?
Well, one quick answer is, I mean, I've always thought that as the years progress, more and more of the effort of AI companies will be entirely devoted to data preparation, and the rest will be small percentage. So preparing the data is the main activity in AI in the future, I think. So.
This is also why, and it was outrageous, that they've taken many of the large language models and trained them on vast data sets of books. Because if you want to say, well, where is the highest quality human data, you tend to find it in books. We put a huge amount of effort into breaking the quality of data that before we print the book. And so it was outrageous that all of that was stolen without consent or compensation. As an author, I speak.
I would also add that we're now expanding to other areas. So the key in experimental is you need to have an assay that measures quantitatively what your objective function is. And so we're applying that to creating molecules that modulate the immune response, reduce inflammation, target tumor cells, for drug delivery purposes. So the key is, now that we've shown that you can do it with antibiotics as a proof of principle, I think if you have a good assay where you can measure in a reliable way what you're trying to measure, then you can scale that up. You can create data sets and you can train your models on those data sets. And so I see it all as a multi-objective optimization function, and now we're doing that for toxicity, to try to reduce toxicity against human cells, red blood cells. We're looking at stability and many, many other properties. And we're doing all of that by creating data from scratch in the lab, which is hard. But now that we know that it works, we're kind of expanding to many, many other areas.
I agree, but I think we are really at the very beginning at the moment there. No?
Yeah.
It's not a standard procedure or not a standard right now. So
absolutely, it's not standard, and again, a lot of our projects are still unfunded. This kind of data set generation, so that indicates exactly what you're saying. That it's not standard. It's not in the mainstream yet, but I think there's huge potential there.
Thank you so much, our panelists. And we only have one last spot for the last questions for our panelists. So, yes, please, may I...
Yeah, thank you very much for the discussion. I have a specific question to Professor Valiant. Because I really like the concept of educability instead of learning or training. I think to achieve AI ethics, we have to educate our AI, agents to separate what is harmful, what is not, right? So this is what you call educability. So the current large language models that we are using are really good at statistical prediction, but struggle with consistent logic like what is good, what is bad. And to achieve this true educability, do we need to move away from the pure transformer to the transformer architecture to a concept-first architecture, where we have to educate our AI to know about the concept first? Do you think that this is achievable? Because we have to separate from what is representation of concept before the computational of the concept. Yeah.
Well, I don't know exactly what you mean, but so the notion of educability, I try to capture the different ways in which we understand concepts. And as I said, there are different ways someone can define it for you. You can discover it from your own experience. So I'm trying to capture the various ways a human approaches it. So the claim in the end is that what will make machines which deal with these questions broadly similarly as far as the functionality. Am I answering your question? So I think my answer is kind of yes, I want to do that.
I think, yeah. I think, but do we need to continue on the transformer, or would we have to change the architecture totally?
Well, I think the transformer is a detail. So by itself, yeah, you need more. You need alternatives. There's also a question of efficiency, that you want to do things with something which is practical. Yeah. So eventually the architectures will evolve away from the current ones, I believe.
Yes, thank you so much, Professor Leslie Gabriel Valiant. And we'll still save the last questions for our audience that he is waving to raise the questions from the very beginning. So, yes, please.
Thank you very much for your discussion. And I have one question, because today we are talking about the AI ethics and data privacy. So as I know, many people don't want to release their health data. Yeah, but if we can somehow access or collect this data, this is kind of, violate the privacy. But if we can access this kind of data, and so we can improve the healthcare system, or we can, accelerate the early stage diagnosis, and it is good for community, I think. And what do you think about this case? And your answer can be changed if your family gets some disease? Thank you. I would like to ask Professor Toby.
Yes, so Professor Toby Walsh, can you answer these questions?
Well, certainly the technology may help us. There are some emerging areas like federated learning where you can learn without having to share the data with anyone else. So I don't see privacy as necessarily being a barrier for us to be able to try and exploit these things. So I'm hopeful that we'll build some technologies like that allow us to deal with the real concerns and valid concerns that people have about sharing their data.
Thank you so much, our panelists. Thank you so much, Professor Toby Walsh, for your answer to these questions. And one more time, thank you so much, everyone in the audience that participating in our panel discussion today. One more time, thank you so much, our distinguished guests and distinguished speakers and our panelists for your actively participating in the Q&A session. One more time, thank you. And could you please kindly return to your seat so we can follow up to the final part. That is the presentation of our professor and also the laureate of the VinFuture Prize Award. Ladies and gentlemen, and now may I introduce to you to follow the pre-recorded closing reflection by Dr. Vincent Gray Cerf, Fathers of the Internet, Google USA, titled Trust and Responsibility in the Digital Age. Video, please.
Hello, my name is Vince Cerf. I'm Vice President and Chief Internet Evangelist at Google. And it's a real honor to address the VinFuture Global Science and Technology Dialogue Forum for 2026. I am one of the very grateful recipients of the VinFuture's Grand Prize in 2022, along with my colleagues, and I continue to be enormously impressed by the way in which the VinFuture's Grand Prize and the dialogues that follow have pursued the interests of so many people in science and technology and have highlighted the value of investing in this area. I've been asked to speak to several things related to the internet and newer technologies like artificial intelligence that have been emerging dramatically over the past several years. Among the things I've been asked are to speak about digital trust in the internet and what those origins might be. Also, just looking at some of the lessons over the past 40 or 50 years of the internet, 50 if you include the fact that it started, the design work started in 1973. Also looking for how to bridge our experience with the internet and its use with artificial intelligence, which is so rapidly becoming a major source of new capability in this online environment. And finally, looking at how one can reinforce trust in a very complex world, especially looking at the human values that trust indicates. So let me start with trust in the internet. Its early origins, which began in 1969 with the ARPANET project, involved a collection of graduate students who basically just were given the task of figuring out how to connect diverse kinds of computers to a packet switch network and make them all interwork. Each of the groups that were doing this work were experts in the particular computers they were working on. And so we implicitly had to trust each other to do our homework on each of those machines to figure out how to create an interoperable protocol that would allow them to exchange information and to be accessed remotely through the packet-switched ARPANET. The success of that program included the creation of something called the Network Working Group, which my very dear friend Steve Crocker led as a very young man, a graduate student at UCLA. That group, made up mostly of graduate students, essentially were self-forming, and since we looked at each other as experts, we trusted each other to do their part in creating this system that would work. And of course, the success of the ARPANET led to Bob Kahn's decision to start working on a network of networks, which today we call the Internet. Once again, the same body of graduate students were tasked to figure out how to make the disparate host computers and disparate networks interwork with each other. We invented the notion of a gateway between disparate packet switch networks. We put new software into the host computers, which we call TCP/IP, that allowed them to communicate through multiple networks. Our whole intent was to make sure that anything could connect to anything else. Of course, you could hang up, so to speak, if you didn't want to talk to the other machine, but we didn't know who should talk to each other. So we trusted that an incoming call might be useful, and if we discovered it wasn't, then we could reject the call. That idea of openness, of freedom of transfer of data back and forth, has infused the Internet over the many years that it has been in operation. There was an implicit assumption of trust. Of course, in today's world, in 2025, we know that not everything, not every computer, and not every person should be trusted. So even if we start out with the assumption of good intent, we have to be able to determine whether or not we should be trusting the other party. There are various ways to do that. Strong authentication, strong identification of the other party can be very helpful. We also need to know something about the bona fides of those other parties. And perhaps third parties can help us do that. It's where you register and get validated and get an authenticable ID that you can use to present to another party, so as to say, here are my credentials. So this trust is still needed, but there's an old expression that President Ronald Reagan used called trust but verify, and increasingly we're finding it important to do that in order to conduct business, so to speak, of any kind in this online environment. In terms of lessons learned, probably among the most important were that connectivity is everything. If you can't communicate, then you can't do anything. Second, that end-to-end communication is important so that the networks in between don't get in the way of end-to-end successful exchange of information. We also came to the realization that people should be able to communicate with each other regardless of which country they happen to be in. The original design was to support the American Defense Command and Control System, which had to work everywhere in the world. So we didn't pay any attention to hosting our networks within geopolitical boundaries. They could go anywhere. We treated them each as autonomous systems with components that could be anywhere in the world that interconnected with each other through gateways, as we called them back then, now of course through routers that communicate with each other using the border gateway protocols. So the extensibility of the architecture of both the ARPANET and the Internet were also important. You could add new protocols at a given layer. So if you didn't like the services available, you could create new ones. You could even create new layers, which is what Sir Tim Berners-Lee did when he introduced the World Wide Web. He created a layer of protocol called Hypertext Transport Protocol on top of the TCP/IP protocols that allowed host-to-host computer communication. So this extensibility basically said, we trust you to try out new ideas. We give you the freedom to do that. If other people like it, maybe it will persist. Maybe it will become a standard. And if they don't use it, then maybe it won't. But this freedom to try things out was tremendously important. We trusted people not to do harmful things. Now, of course, it's 2025. We know people do harmful things. And so now we have a problem, and it's called accountability. And we now realize that parties have to be held accountable for bad behavior, whether they're companies or individuals or even countries. Of course, they have to be identifiable, which means that absolute anonymity is no longer our friend in this environment. In order to trust, we have to know who the parties are. at need. So you may be able to operate anonymously, but until, of course, something goes wrong, something bad happens, and then we have to be able to pierce the veil of anonymity in order to hold parties accountable. And obviously this requires international cooperation, because sometimes a party who's causing trouble is in one jurisdiction and the victims are in others, and those jurisdictions need to cooperate with each other in order to achieve the objective, which is to achieve accountability. On the other side of this is agency, and that's providing tools for individuals, corporations, countries to defend themselves in this online environment, to validate the other parties, to use cryptography for confidentiality, or for digital signatures for integrity and sources, identification of sources, provenance. And so these are all tools that we need to introduce into the system where they don't exist in order to increase the level of trust that we can legitimately offer to the parties who are online. So now we need to look at artificial intelligence, and in particular agents, artificially intelligent agents, that will be interacting with each other and with people in the online environment. And everything we've talked about with regard to trust and authentication and verification and the like will apply to artificially intelligent agents. We need to be able to hold them accountable. We need to be able to do audit trails to figure out what they've done and when they did it, especially if something goes wrong. There are a wide range of things that apply to people that will also have to apply to artificially intelligent agents in this online environment. So everything that applies to people will apply to them as well. We probably also need to know, have the ability to distinguish between an AI agent and a human being. And that's yet another distinction that could turn out to be very important as this AI world evolves. So looking forward, I think that we need to simultaneously adopt norms that make it a regular practice of the use of strong authentication, of the use of cryptography for confidentiality, for mechanisms that introduce accountability, and for ways of assuring that someone else can't take over your identity. I mean, things like two-factor authentication are very important tools in this online space. Perhaps the most important lesson I think I've taken away is that once you create this enormous canvas on which anyone in the world can write, which we call the World Wide Web, then you are going to have to cope with the fact that some people are going to put things on the canvas that we think shouldn't be there, or they're going to do things with the canvas that cause harm and trouble. So we have to understand that people are at the root of some of these bad behaviors. No matter how hard we try with technology to defend against these things, we don't always succeed in preventing them. And so first, we should use technology to keep bad things from happening. Second, we should say to people, if we catch you doing some of these things, there will be consequences. We call that post hoc enforcement, and sometimes that does require international cooperation. And lastly, we can say, please don't do that. It's just wrong. Now that sounds a little wimpy, but I have to remind you that the weakest force in the universe is gravity. And when you have enough mass, gravity holds planets in orbit and keeps us from flying off of planet Earth. So large adoption of norms in a society can create very powerful forces to discipline that society and aim it towards a more trusting and safer environment. So let's hope that we can introduce norms that broadly reflect human values and protect people's individuality and protect their safety in the online environment. I wish I could be there with you. I'm sorry that I can't, but I'm eager to hear the results of the dialogue that will come out in this very important meeting. Meanwhile, I hope I'll see you on the net.
Thank you so much for your attention to our presentation from Dr. Vincent Gray Cerf. And now it is my honor and privilege to one more time invite to the stage Associate Professor Bui The Duy to deliver the closing remarks of today's symposium. So Associate Professor Bui The Duy, please.
Distinguished professor, scientists, expert speakers, and esteemed delegates. So after more than 3 hours of insightful presentations and rich and multi-dimensional discussions, we can draw several key messages regarding the ethics, safety, and the futures of artificial intelligence. First, as highlighted throughout today's presentations, AI can only truly serve humanity when it is developed on foundation of ethics, transparencies, verifiabilities, and accountabilities. This requires both technical design and legal frameworks to prioritize human protections and strengthens public trust. Second, the international experiences shared today clearly show that responsible innovation can only be achieved through interdisciplinary collaborations, public participation, and strong cooperation between academia, industries, and governments. These are lessons that Vietnam can meaningfully adopt in improving its own AI ecosystem. Third, insights from the roundtable indicate that Vietnam has significant potential to emerge as a regional leader in responsible AIs. Actually, we have just finished the UNESCO's assessments for responsible AIs. Ladies and gentlemen, from today's discussions, I would like to emphasize 3 major directions for Vietnam. First, strengthening education and talent development in AI, from broad public digital literacy to training highly specialized experts. Second, advancing interdisciplinary cooperations by bringing together scientists, experts, engineers, physicians, educators, and policymakers to jointly design, test, and oversee AI systems. Third, expanding international cooperations to learn from pioneering governance models and contribute to global effort towards safe and human-centered AIs. And actually, we are working with UN to propose an AI hub for ASEAN in Vietnam. Ladies and gentlemen, with its responsibilities for state management in science, technology, and innovations, the Ministry of Science and Technology is committed to working closely with scientists, experts, businesses, and both domestic and international partners to build and advance a safe, human-centered, and people-oriented artificial intelligence ecosystem. Once again, I wish to express my sincere appreciation to the VinFuture Foundations for organizing such a meaningful and impactful forums, one that brings together the world's leading scientists to share knowledge and inspire a future of responsible AI. The Foundation's efforts have greatly contributed to advancing global dialogue and supporting countries, including Vietnam, in assessing humanity's most pioneering ideas. My deepest thanks to all the professors, international speakers, the VinFuture Foundations, and all of you for your contributions and participation in today's event. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Associate Professor Bui The Duy, for the closing speech on today's symposium, Global Frontier, AI Ethics and Safety for Humanity. And now it's time for us, and it's also my privilege to invite to the stage Dr. Lê Mai Lan to deliver the closing remarks of today's symposium. So Dr. Lê Mai Lan, please welcome to be on the stage.
Your Excellency Deputy Minister Bui The Duy, Professor Sir Richard Henry Friend, Chair of the VinFuture Prize Council, distinguished professors, scientists, policymakers, representatives of organization and business, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for giving me a chance to share a few words in a very important and critical event today. I would say that for more than 3 hours today, we have not only listened to pioneering ideas, we have worked together through a journey of responsibility towards the future. And we are so thankful for the profound insight shared by Professor Geoffrey Hinton, Joshua Bengio, Toby Walsh, Leslie Valiant, César de la Fuente, Edson Prester, as well as leading experts, and especially the sharing conclusion from Professor Vincent Cray Cerf. And that all brought us into a common conclusion. AI is opening a new era, one in which the decision we make today will shape the world for many generations to come. We also know that AI can help cure disease, predict natural disaster, accelerate scientific creativity, and expand human capability. But AI can also introduce bias, trigger system failures, or obscure human values if AI is not governed responsibly. The Deputy Minister's clear and inspiring message had just reminded us, our country, Vietnam, chose to approach AI with both ambition and responsibility, placing community benefits and ethical development at the center. AI for good, AI with trust, AI for serving and assisting people. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is precisely why our journey does not end with today's dialogue. And now is the most challenging part. We all received questions of asking, so what next? And we are asked to turn knowledge into action. So on behalf of the VinFuture Foundation, I'm very honored to announce 2 concrete next steps. First, VinFuture will develop a policy brief on AI ethics and safety, grounded in today's discussion and enriched by contribution from leading experts in Vietnam and around the world. So this document aims to support the development of responsible AI governance frameworks, both for Vietnam and for other countries navigating similar challenges. And second, about education and training. We are delighted to share that the Provost of Vinh University will launch a masterclass on AI ethics and safety, led by Professor Tan Yap Peng, our Provost, and also the former interim dean of the School of Engineering at Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. They are one of the leading universities for AI research, engineering, and adapted innovation, and they are our partner. So we really hope that Professor Tan will shape a globally benchmark program that places ethical, safe, and responsible AI development as its core, together with international experts and local Vietnamese experts. And in parallel with our training, VinUni respectfully propose that the leaders of science, technology, and the leader of government please consider convening a task force of leading experts from Vietnam and the world to develop Vietnam's national standards for AI ethics and safety. VinUni stands ready, VinFuture stands ready to participate as an active member contributing to Vietnam's emerging ecosystem for responsible AI. And I would say that these initiatives are not simply technical exercise, even though it's just a starting point, but they are foundational efforts to build Vietnam's capabilities, standards, and culture of responsible AI. Now, allow me, on behalf of the VinFuture Foundation, to make a call to action. If we want AI to serve humanity, then we must first understand AI and lead AI with knowledge, with responsibility, and with value. And we respectfully invited scientists to continue your research, critique, and thought leadership. Technology enterprises to participate in testing and deploying safe and trustworthy AI. Universities and research institutes to embed AI ethics into your curricula for the next generations. Regulatory agencies to continue guiding, supporting, and connecting resources to build a transparent, accountable, and human-centered AI ecosystem. And ladies and gentlemen, AI is neither inherently good nor bad. It is human who will shape the future of AI, and that future starts today. With the strong direction of the government and the Ministry of Science and Technology and the collective commitment of our scientific, business, and innovation communities, Vietnam is well positioned to contribute meaningfully to the global conversation of responsible AI development. On behalf of the VinFuture Foundation, I extend my sincere gratitude to all of you for being here, supporting, sharing, and inspire this essential dialogue. We look forward to continue this journey together, and thank you very much, and I wish you good health, happiness, and continued success. See you next year with the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lê Mai Lan, for the closing remark and for your leadership in guiding this important initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, and with the speech of Dr. Lê Mai Lan, our symposium today is coming to an end. On behalf of the organizing team, I would love to thank you so much, our audience, for your attention and your participation into our event. And I would love to also thank you so much. We would love to express our deepest gratitude for our distinguished guests, panelists, chairs, and especially our speakers for your participation and especially your informative presentations and discussion from various issues of our topic today about the ethics and the safety for humanity. One more time, thank you so much, and don't forget to be with us. Stay tuned for the VinFuture Prize Award Ceremony 2025. Will be premiered on VTV1 Vietnam National Television on December the 5th. Thank you so much. Goodbye for now, and see you tomorrow.